Chapter 753, Bishop Visits. After the philosophy class, Klein had a feeling as though he hadn't slept in 3 days. His mind was filled with names and concepts like skepticism, metaphysics, a priori and a posteriori, nominalism, Roselle socialism, existentialism, and positivism. If it wasn't because the original Klein had studied history, which included some mastery of philosophy, he doubted that he had the ability to last through the lesson. This wasn't his college lessons on Earth. They were one-to-one, making it impossible for him to sleep, daydream, or read novels on his cell phone when he didn't understand the content. Actually, Mr. Hamid was quite different from what I had imagined. He was humorous, candid, and extroverted. His lesson wasn't dull, making him unlike a philosophy teacher. He also doesn't possess the stereotypes of a Lord of Storms believer. Klein rubbed his temples, turned to leave, and walked to the staircase. He returned to the third floor as his valet, Richardson, followed him in silence. During this process, he discovered that his servants were busy with their own duties. None of them were lazing about, and they would only stop when their employer walked past. They would bow and greet him, clearly indicating how well-mannered they were. Tanja is very capable when it comes to the arrangement and management of household matters after all. Klein walked through the corridor on the third floor and walked to the half-open room. Before he walked in, Klein saw butler Walter hanging 2 double-barreled hunting rifles on the wall, making the interior have a raw and bold feeling. This was a decoration every tycoon's home had. It's very easy to get approved for a hunting license. A double-barreled hunting rifle is potent, enough to allow the servants to fend off any criminals who wish to burgle or kidnap me. After hanging the rifle up, Walter took 2 steps back and observed the hunting rifle. He then took out a golden pocket watch from his inner pocket. Puh! He opened the pocket watch and looked at the lid's interior. His stern, old-fashioned face softened significantly. Klein coughed gently to inform his butler before pushing open the ajar door and walked in. Walter closed the pocket watch, returned to his spot, and bowed. "Sir, we applied for 6 hunting licenses and bought 6 double-barreled hunting rifles and the corresponding canister cartridges." Klein had Death Knell hiding under his armpit, so he didn't mind it too much. All he did was nod as a form of acknowledgement. He then revealed a warm smile and asked as though having a casual chat. "Back when I saw the information from the Family Servant Assistants Association, I noticed that you already have a wife and child." A butler was the assistant to the employer. He was a confidant that knew many matters. Therefore, establishing rapport with the butler was something every employer had to do. Klein didn't wish to be an exception. Furthermore, he remembered Arod's mentioning that butler Walter could result in additional developments. Walter answered in all seriousness. "Yes, back when I was a servant at the Viscount Conrad's manor, I had to have constant contact with a lady due to work. We began having feelings for each other, and under the goddess's watch, we walked down the aisle of marriage and ended up having a daughter. She's currently studying at a grammar school and wishes to pass the Backland University's entrance exams. However, that's something to consider only 2 years later." Upon mentioning his wife and daughter, this unsmiling butler's tone unknowingly turned mellow. At present, all the churches were emphasizing the importance of family. It was to stem the stress and mental problems that arose due to the tide of technological progress. The only difference was that different churches emphasized different matters. For Evernight, men and women were equal as they helped one another in the family. For Storm, men were to work outside while women were to handle the family to be the former's supportive angel. For Steam, it was more about learning more and to have technology do more of the work. All of them had their strengths, and they complemented each other. Klein felt wistful hearing that, as he said, "Ma'am Tanja seems to be single." "Yes," Walter's expression turned solemn again. "In modern society, male and female servants still do not enjoy equal treatment. I'm not referring to the salary, as a housekeeper is at the same level as a butler or butler assistant, earning £25 to £50 a year. Instead, I'm talking about a deeper idea and belief. The church is trying to change it, but there's plenty of resistance. After all, the goddess isn't the only belief in loan." He paused and added, "Male servants can get married, but if a female servant were to have a family, It implies the loss of her job or becoming the lowest laundress who's only a part-time employee that doesn't need to live at the employer's residence. All of these will change only when one reaches the rank of housekeeper. But this isn't something a young and inexperienced lady is qualified for. Klein didn't continue on the topic as he nodded gently. He then walked towards the reclining chair. At this moment, his gaze swept by the piled newspaper by the coffee table. His mind stirred as he paused, turned to the side, and said to his butler, "I saw an advertisement on the papers regarding the sale of Backlund Bike Company shares. Find a professional lawyer and accountant to inquire about it to figure out the exact situation." I'm rather interested in this industry. If the price is right, I'll consider buying it. For a second, Klein thought of a problem. As a tycoon who had brought huge sums of money to Backlund to seek out better opportunities, it was impossible that he didn't pay attention to the sale of the Backlund Bike Company shares. Since he didn't know the prospects of this industry, he needed to hire people to gain a better understanding of it. Otherwise, it wouldn't fit his persona. Of course, I can also raise the price as a result, allowing me to sell those 10% shares at a higher price. Yes, I have to remember to just raise the price a little and not be too greedy. If I were to keep raising the price and it ends up back in my hands, I'll be crying. It would throw all my liquidity into it, and I won't be able to maintain my daily expenses. As Klein fantasized, he warned himself. "Yes, sir." Walter didn't ask further as he directly agreed. At 4:35 p.m., Richardson knocked on the door and entered. He said to Dwayne Dance, who was reading leisurely, "Sir, Mr. Maury Macht and his wife, Ma'am Rihanna, as well as St. Samuel Cathedral's Bishop Electra, is here to pay you a visit." Maury Macht, that House of Commons member of Parliament. Also, why would St. Samuel Cathedral's bishop be here as well? Klein thought and asked with a smile, "Is there such a protocol?" He had only attended 2 etiquette lessons and knew that at his stage, visits wouldn't be that direct. People would first send their butlers or servants to hand over an invitation or schedule a visit. Richardson habitually lowered his head and said, "Yes. It's because Mr. Butler informed the neighbors that you would be home in the afternoon for the next week when he was delivering your name cards and gifts. Under such a situation, neighbors who received your name card and have heard about you will observe the corresponding details. Not only can they send their servants to invite you over, but they can also pass by on the excuse of being out on an afternoon stroll from 4 to 5 to make a semi-formal visit. Oh, the ladies will wear strolling attire. Otherwise, it wouldn't be decent enough. And you can also invite them to have afternoon tea with you." Klein walked to the door and allowed Richardson to retrieve his coat to help him wear it. He then asked, "Then why would Bishop Electra be here as well?" This was what he really cared about most. The first question was to lead up to it. Richardson answered as though he had prepared an answer. Bishop Electra was a guest at Member of Parliament Mack's house in the afternoon. They must have mentioned you while having a chat and decided to pay a visit by strolling over. His hands weren't affected by his talking. He skillfully helped Dwayne Dance adjust his attire. Klein tersely acknowledged, and after Richardson went forward to open the door, he walked out. Soon, he saw the 3 visitors in a small living room on the 2nd floor. Maury Macht was a classic Lonese gentleman. He was in his 40s, and he had black hair and brown eyes. He had a deep outline with a receding hairline. His face was a little thin and long. He was formerly in the military and had entered politics after being discharged. He started his career in Backlund until he became a member of Parliament of the Kingdom's House of Commons. He was a believer of the Evernight Goddess and a member of the New Party. He was in support of improving the environment. His wife, Rihanna, was from a family of lawyers. She provided plenty of funding for her husband's political ambitions, and she was also a believer of the Evernight Goddess. Electra wore a black, double-breasted clergyman's robe. He looked to be 40, and he had deep blue eyes and a thin face. He wasn't good-looking, but for some baffling reason, he was pleasing to the eyes. Klein had once met this bishop when he was donating money into the donation box. Upon seeing Dwayne Dance appear, Maury Macht took 2 steps forward and chuckled. "I've been hearing for the past few days that a pious believer in the goddess had moved into Unit 160, and I've been wanting to visit. We happen to be taking a stroll today, and we took the liberty to visit. Please pardon us for our faux pas." Klein smiled and tapped his chest 4 times in a clockwise fashion. "At such times, the only thing we need to do is praise the lady." "Praise the lady." Electra and Rihanna nodded as they drew a crimson moon on their chests. After exchanging pleasantries, Klein invited his 3 guests to take a seat. A maid hurriedly delivered some tea and coffee. Housekeeper Tanja had already asked each one of them what they wanted prior. "Mr. Dance, I heard you're a merchant from Daisy. I wonder what business you were previously engaged in?" Maury Macht asked casually before joking. "Your last name just makes me think of many things." He was referring to the protagonist's name of a particular best-selling novel, written by Emperor Roselle. Klein smiled and humorously asked in return, "What kind of business does digging up treasure count as?" This was also related to the content of said best-selling novel. Without waiting for the member of parliament to answer him, he said the answer he had long fabricated. "I once had my own mine, but as you know, it will one day be mined out." Mining cities would also end up waning as a result. He was hinting that he was born in one of the resource-rich cities in Daisy County. There, gangs were rampant, and there were many secret tycoons. If ordinary people were to attempt to investigate Dwayne Dance's situation, it would take them at least half a year. Bishop Electra nodded in thought as he asked, "So, you chose to come to Backland to seek out new opportunities. May I know who proselytized you into the church?"